All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome. So again, my name is Renee Hadley with the Walla Walla County Conservation District, and you probably saw me yesterday in my Wade president hat. So Jennifer Boie, also with Palouse CD, is going to be helping us out, and we'll go through a little bit of resources that you can use, different tips, things for new employees and just new folks in general to keep in mind. So a little bit about us. Let's see if this is going to transfer over. There we go. So this is kind of an overview of all that we're going to cover. And so just so that you know, we'll have lots of spots in the very end. What do you want to know? Those question Q&A time. And to please, it's kind of awkward when we're doing this virtually in that we don't always speak up like if we would or were in a room. And I really want you to try to break out of that and use this as a brainstorming session. Any pending questions that have just been burning in your mind, please type them in or raise your hand so that we can address those and make sure that you are taken care of because we are just one big conservation district family. So I'll show you a little bit. So my background, I've been with the CD for 4 years. I'm a licensed geologist. I did landside hazard stuff in Puget Sound as a private consultant, including stormwater management for new development and before that agriculture extension when I was overseas. And so Jennifer, I don't know if you want to chime in and just to state a little bit regarding yourself.
Yeah, sure. Good morning, everybody. It's so nice to be with you all, especially after many long months of being alone. It's great to be surrounded by the rest of the conservation family, as Renee said earlier. We are a close-knit group, so it's great to have new folks on the line, and I look forward to meeting you all. I have been with Palouse Conservation District for about 10 years. I've been the CD manager there for a little over 7 years, and prior to that, I did a lot of work all within the realm of ecosystem ecology and the social sciences side of natural resources conservation work. Spent about 10 years doing education and outreach, and then did a lot of watershed planning and salmon habitat restoration in the lower Clearwater region of Idaho. So I have at this point decided that I think I have done every job at the district at some point in my career. So like Renee said, we're here to help, and we really look forward to talking with you about whatever's on your mind. So thanks for being with us this morning.
Wonderful. So you're not alone. So there's, I gotta tell you a personal story. When I first started, I found out very promptly stepping into the management role that half of my staff were going to retire within 3 years. That was quite alarming to me because of all of that institutional knowledge. But Ray Ledgerwood, who retired last year, was so key in pointing out that we have 45 districts with, plus or minus 300 employees. And nationwide, we have 700 employees that we can rely on and ask questions and research with and just get through this so that we're not, trying to figure and reinvent the wheel each time. So the State Conservation Commission has a great website where you can access and get information. And so also the WACD, the Washington Association of Conservation Districts, and Lori over at the Plant Materials Center, she collects data every quarter, and that's updated and distributed to each conservation district. So if you don't have access to this, ask your regional manager, or I'm sorry, your office manager or HR folks where that might be. I personally at the Walla Walla Conservation District have that on our office drive so everybody has access. And inside it has different pages, so it has all of the employees at that district, their phone numbers and emails. It has, their job titles. So if you know that you heard of somebody at Palouse CD and they were doing some CREP and you're doing some CREP and you wanted to ask them a question, but you don't quite remember who they are, you can go to that and figure it out. Also, the State Conservation Commission, they have a great resource of who and what, and also what they do. And so, for example, CREP, my staff, Joanna, she may be researching and double checking some things there. And then she might go to Brian Cochran the habitat coordinator for the State Conservation Commission, and then she might also sort of double back to some other folks. So there's lots of resources there. There's also through the Center for Technical Development, the Ask an Expert. Specifically, they have a riparian and each of their different disciplines. And so there might be an engineering question, and that gets forwarded to a very specific person who is knowledgeable in that field. And so I'm not an agronomy expert, and so I may ask specifically to the agronomy person, hey, can you connect me, or I have this brainstorming question, how do you help, or what resources are out there? And they're pretty responsive, and so that's encouraging to know that that's available. So all three, both the Washington Association of Conservation Districts, the State Conservation Commission, the Center for Technical Development, all resources available to you. And this is, sometimes it can be confusing if we double back, sort of who are these different organizations and how do they relate to each other? And so Josh with King Conservation District was happy enough to share this with us. So here we are as staff of our local conservation district in this bubble on the lower right-hand corner. And we have these 45 different conservation districts across the state and 3,000 nationwide with over 7,000 employees. And then also at the local level, we have our extension office or NRCS office and our FSA offices as well. But then if you go up to the state level, you have all of those different folks and folks that are involved in the State Conservation Commission, and you still have access through your regional manager or even some of those experts at the State Conservation Commission. They're talking with those DNR and WC Extension and NRCS state folks. And so it's not like those guys are a little bit outside of your realm. It's really, they are just, that 6 degrees of separation. They're just within your family of resources. You just may not know them just yet. So I mentioned the WACD, they have that resource for you, that directory of employees. And the State Conservation has theirs, and the Center for Technical Development, if you're not quite too sure, they're a division underneath the State Conservation Commission. So hopefully this will help. Moving on, a little bit about acronyms. Every government agency I have ever worked for loves acronyms. It can be quite frustrating. And so I always want you to remember, it's just like any other subject matter. You're just going to have to learn the new vocabulary. And so check with your district. At my local district, we have a couple of different acronym sheets that were prepared. We add and expand to them on a regular basis. But I included on the side a couple of sentences that I have heard and said myself. And it's important to note specifically for those of you dealing with landowners, if you say this sentence regarding permitting that you need an HPA from the Department of Fish and Wildlife through the apps before you install an LWD, and don't forget your SEPA, how would you feel if somebody said something like that to you and you didn't know what was going on? It's important to put yourself in their shoes, because if we say something like this, it could come across very demeaning, and that's not quite the trust building aspect we really want to include. So some things are universal in certain worlds, such as CRP. People kind of understand that if they're a farmer in an area that has 100,000 acres of CRP. But if you're talking to a different, like a banking entity or a joint venture that may not be on the land-based side, maybe they're on the financial or contract side of that land, it may be a little bit different. And so just keep that in mind, that acronyms can be a little put off-ish. So, and this is just an example of what we have at the Walla Walla County Conservation District. We have our own specific one for local agencies such as our Gardena Farms Irrigation District is actually local, but even just what is FSA and what is an FY, what's a photog and how do we relate with EQIP versus a FOA, things like a FOIA, just things like that that might be considered. And just remember that DOE also means Department of Energy. And so you just need to be clear, do you mean DOE ecology or DOE energy? And so from this point, I will pass it over to Jennifer, who's going to continue and talk a little bit about some other resources for you.
Okay, let's see, I'm going to show my screen here. All right, sorry, we're going to transition here. I'm going to pick up where Renee left off. So, okay, hopefully you all can see that there.
We also get your video going. Oh, perfect. Thank you, Jennifer.
Okay, sure. So let me minimize my screen, looking at myself so I can see what I'm talking to you all about here. Okay, so one of the great resources that Renee and I have been talking about as we've been preparing for this presentation and that we often talk about with staff are the resources available at the Center for Technical Development. So the acronym CTD, you'll hear that all throughout Wade as we're going through trainings this week. And the Center for Technical Development has put a lot of time into providing resources and making them available to staff and supervisors at districts. And so this page here just kind of shows an overview of some of the things that you can find on the CTD website. This can be your first place to go if you're interested in training, if you want to stay connected, signing up for the newsletter, walking yourself through some other resources available. And we're going to take a quick look at some of the new employee resources. I'm waiting for my slide to advance here. Oh, sorry, folks, we're having a little bit of technical difficulty. I'll try that again. I don't know if you guys can see my slides still. They're not advancing.
Jennifer, if you go on the bottom right, there's some arrows and you should be able to do.
Yeah, let's see.
If you try reading pane view, it might be a little bit easier for you. So on the bottom that you've got, try one just to the left of that one, or there you go.
Okay, this maybe that'll work better.
Let's try
Let's
that.
see if I can advance from here. We'll start here and we'll see if I can advance. So some of the materials that are available on that new employee resource page include, again, signing up for the CTD newsletter. It's a great way to stay in touch with all the trainings that are going on, different opportunities for technical staff and others at the district. And they also keep a calendar of the training events that are upcoming as well. So it's a lot of staff from across the state work with other staff that spend more of their time at CTD, and they really try to make this accessible to everybody. On here, you can also create a training plan, and you can learn more about certification, and we'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end of the presentation. Oh, it's working, look at that. Okay. Additionally, there are some really good resources here for a big overview of the conservation map across the state of Washington. As Renee just walked you through, kind of the organizational chart for the conservation family in the state. There are a couple orientation videos that are available here. One specifically for supervisors and staff that go over the overview, history, mission and principles of conservation in the state. And then our good friend, Ray Ledgerwood, as Renee also talked about him earlier. He is now retired, but he used to do fantastic new employee introduction trainings for staff. He would often do them at Wade. I think this is the first year he's not, so Renee and I are here with you. And Ray used to also take that show on the road and go to local conservation districts, meet with new staff, and try to get them oriented as to what was going on across the state. So take a look. In Ray's last new employee introduction, he was at Palouse Conservation District, and we actually videoed his time there. So you can actually spend some time with Ray, which I highly recommend. He will give you a great overview to the history of conservation across the state, across the nation. So take a look at that. One thing that we had come to realize at Palouse Conservation District is that onboarding somebody and really helping them feel welcome and giving them the lay of the land really takes some time and dedication. And I can say this because we have learned this maybe the hard way over the years. We used to be a district of just 3 staff, and over the course of a couple years, we grew to have almost 25 staff in our field season and more like 20 staff regularly. And so I have to say, onboarded some folks very poorly at the beginning of that. We didn't really realize what it takes to bring somebody in who doesn't know about the acronym soup that Renee talked about, doesn't know all the different partners across the state, and doesn't really know anything about your organizational dynamics or operations, and really make them feel like they're welcome and ready to do their job. So over the past 5 years, we've developed some different checklists to try to help staff really get a good orientation to what's going on locally at our district, as well as across the state. And so we are happy to share these checklists, and I will send one on to Nicole so she can post them as well. But we found this really helpful to kind of break up these orientation tasks by different program areas. And so we actually have very detailed, line by line, as you can see, things that we recommend that every new staff do. It includes time for them to do all the necessary paperwork with finance and operations, learn about the important things like, as simple as signing in and signing out, getting reimbursed for charges, submitting timesheets, those really basic things, to meeting with the district manager or director and having some time to see kind of the big picture. How does the board interface with setting policy? How does the staff work together to get the day-to-day work done and serve the community? And how do all the positions at the district interface, and what are the roles there? So this has been really helpful for that. And then we have all of the details there that you can see under direct supervisor, reviewing your job description, setting your schedule, getting business cards, just to make sure that everybody is really up and running. And then what we recommend is we have everybody spend about an hour, every new employee or intern or volunteer, spend an hour with each staff person so that they can learn about their individual job, the program that they work in, and just have that one-on-one time to really get to know their colleagues. So these checklists have been great. And since we've been using them, we've heard from new employees coming in that it's been very helpful. So as a new employee, if your district doesn't have something like this, feel free to download the template and talk with your supervisor and say, can we use this as a guide as we move through and as I get oriented to being here? So, okay. Another great way to make sure that you're connected and that you're interfacing with your colleagues across the state is to go on the Center for Technical Development website again, and you can get into the database there, and you are able to create a new account and update a profile. So in addition to the Washington Association of Conservation Districts directory that Renee was talking about, this database has a little bit more detail on people's technical expertise and the role that they can play at their local district, as well as any particular expertise they can share with others across the state. So this is a great way to get yourself plugged into that. And before you know it, you might even be somebody who's getting email forwarded to you on the Ask an Expert. So we're just going to talk a little bit more at the end here about some other training resources. The Conservation Commission has a great landing page for training on their website. And you can see here, it's broken down into some different levels here. There's some really good training on governance. So if you want to learn more about how districts operate, what that governance structure looks like, you can learn about the CAP program, the Conservation Accountability program that we have that guides all districts to make sure that we are responsive to the community and that we're following the legal obligations that we have through the state of Washington. So I highly recommend read that CAP guide. It'll show you what a well-oiled machine looks like. And it might even bring some ideas on how you can help improve things at your own home district. You can learn more about how supervisors and board members work together and their roles, as well as their powers and authorities, and all of the open government standards that we as municipal officers are held to. So I highly recommend that. As you flip through this page, you'll find other resources on operations and other technical resources as well. And there is a training landing page for the Center for Technical Development. And here you can walk through that calendar as I talked about. You can make your own plan template. There's the Ask the Expert link there, as well as some opportunities to access the database and some of the other training certification that we'll talk about in the next slide here. I would say as a new employee, just attending the WADE conference, you are on the right path. I mean, this is the place where everybody gets together yearly. This year, you know, as you've heard many times, we're on the virtual platform, so it's a little bit different. But generally, this is a great opportunity to network, talk to folks, learn about what they're doing at their home districts, get your batteries recharged, and return to your district with some great new ideas and some great new friends and colleagues to support you. So the WADE conference, come every chance you can get. There's also, you heard about the, we're going to go through the acronyms here, SCC. So they have the Gov Delivery sign up for the State Conservation Commission. And then again, that CTD, Center for Technical Development newsletter sign up. Also, the SAO is the State Auditor's Office, and there's a lot of really good resources there about government accountability and district accountability. So those are some really good resources available to you to get to know a little bit more. And then just reach out. As Renee mentioned, we are a close-knit group of folks across the state. I love it when somebody just calls me and I get to chat with them for a little bit, and I'm happy to share what I know. And I know I've never encountered anybody in the district family who wasn't willing to answer a question, take a phone call. So please reach out. So we're going to talk a little bit about planner certification opportunities for those who are on the path, a technical path, and want to get certified. There are several different types of certification that are available. We work very closely with our partner agency, NRCS, and we also have planner certifications through the Center for Technical Development. So Renee and I are going to pull in our moderator for this session, Nicole, because she is the expert in all things regarding planner certification. So we're going to pull Nicole in and let Nicole talk just real briefly with you about the different types of certification available and just a few of the differences between them. So Nicole, we're going to hand it.
Good morning, everybody. Okay, so The planner certification can be a little confusing, so I appreciate just taking a moment here. So, and I'm the chair of the Center for Technical Development and also our certification lead. And so up on your screen, you can see 3 different icons, one for NRCS planner certification, one for CTD planner certification, and then you see the CTD continuing education program. And then there's also a course that people get a little confused in here as well that I'll get to. And so I just want to highlight a couple things here. The NRCS planner certification process is just a great culmination of various training opportunities that can qualify you for different stages of NRCS planning. Specifically, they call them, you're an apprentice planner, then a certified planner, then a master planner. Most folks in districts are going to achieve that apprentice level planner, maybe that certified level if you need to. Couple reasons to go down that path. One is that it just provides you a good foundation of learning and training opportunities to get you on your way towards planning. But if you are going to write NRCS plans or you're working with NRCS on specific programs, you're going to actually need to achieve some level of that. It is surprisingly getting easier right now. I'm trying to find them. One of the silver linings of COVID has been that they have put a ton of trainings into their AgLearn web system. So things you would have had to attend in person, you can now do from your desk in your office or right now in your home to get those trainings. So all the apprentice level training, that first block is now online. So it's a great opportunity there. How that kind of advances here into the CTD planner certification is that NRCS planner certification is very general. It's not specific to a discipline. It's just for overall conservation planning, no matter what direction you go from there. The CTD certification process was developed for a few different reasons. The big ones are, number one, to verify and definitely to acknowledge our planners in specific disciplines. So currently we have a dairy, a farm, and a riparian planner certification process that just shows your level of expertise in there. So we have 3 different levels. And the purpose of that was really to be able to not only demonstrate to our partner agencies the qualifications that we have with conservation district staff and their incredible expertise out there, but then also to give you a pathway to maintain that or to grow within your discipline. Hence, that is what that continuing education program is. So once you're in that CTD planner certification path, you get to stay along that certification. It prioritizes you into trainings that you need. It gets you some special opportunities there, and it connects you with people of a similar planning discipline. We're also adding new ones as we go along. Forestry is the next in the queue, and we've got some others down the line. We actually just received our first round of applications. We have 13 folks come into our planner certification system, and we hope by the end of this month we will be acknowledging those people. Very exciting to see that first round come through. And just a note, how the NRCS and CTD certifications are connected is that we use that apprentice level certification within NRCS as the base for our CTD certification. We do that for a few reasons. The first one, of course, is with all NRCS things, it's a nationally vetted and composed block of training and program. And so it's something that we can really verify and utilize very effectively. It also provides us a level of quality assurance within our program that's really important to maintain quality and for our partners to acknowledge what we're up to. So you will need to do some of those things in order to meet that CTD. So I recommend, if you're curious about this, just go onto our website, click on both of these. You can read what they are and how to negotiate that. You'll also find some other information on there about what those are. The only additional one that sometimes is a little confusing for folks is you may have heard about the Introduction to Conservation Planning course. So that is, you've got got an online version and then a classroom version for that class. And it is all new employees should be able to sign up, and you should take that. It gets you enrolled in what are the 9 steps of planning? What is this planning process? How do I do this really effectively? Find all the resources I need, because it can be pretty confusing. So that is a course. Some folks thought historically that was a certification. Unfortunately, it was discussed like that in the past, but it's just a course. It's one of the most important building blocks as a new employee to get yourself into that planning process. So again, we have on this webpage that's shown, there's some FAQs on there, if you will, and it just tries to define what those 3 different things are to remove some of that confusion. However, as was already noted too, if you ever have questions, there's always a link to talk to someone on there and to ask those questions. And it's great to get those. The more questions that we can receive, we can then put that information back into FAQs. If one person has a question, most likely many do. So we love to receive your feedback at CTD and improve our website, our resources, our content, whatever we can do for you guys. So just check out the certification process. It's a great way to create a training plan as well when you're new. That was already shown as well. We've got training templates up on here that has a pretty detailed Excel spreadsheet and otherwise for each of these different levels of NRCS or CTD certification, and what are all the training or requirements in there. So we're trying to help provide you resources so that you can easily walk down that path. So again, if you go and explore this and you have questions, contact CTD anytime. We're happy to help you walk through it. And there's also a few webinars up on our website now to really help you through that process and look through that. And then one more, I did have a question, so I'm just going to give a clarification. Someone asked what was the name of that that first step in your conservation planning, and it is simply called conservation planning. So part 1 is what you will see in AgLearn, part 2 is a classroom, and part 3 is writing a plan for that culmination of conservation planning, and it's going to be a 3-part series. So you'll find that in AgLearn, which AgLearn unto itself is a whole nother thing we won't even talk about, but something for you guys also to explore. So thanks, Jennifer.
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. And there's also some great resources on this web page, like Nicole said, that will talk with you about the difference between those courses. If you didn't catch that all, we have time now to have questions, and I think Renee's going to hop on here again, and Nicole's going to stay with us. So if you have any questions at all, we wanted to just be available for you for the second half of the session and answer those questions, talk with you, help you feel a little bit more oriented to the lay of the land here. So we are available.
Yeah, so folks, I will remind you, please, any questions you have, please put them in the question box. I'll moderate those for you, as well as just raise your hand and I can just unclick you and you can ask your question directly and have it answered conversationally. So your choice, just start to get those things in there. Looks like we've got one 3-part question that's already come in, as well as a clarification really quick. Jessica did note when Jennifer was showing that smart sheet that showed all of that onboarding of a district employee, that if you have the smart sheet application, you can be able to download that and have that shared workspace. So we'll put a link on the CTD webpage as was discussed so that you can access that. Okay, the other question, yeah, go ahead.
So if you don't have smart sheets, I was still able to download that as an Excel and edit that specifically for what we have at Walla Walla Conservation District. And it really was a great onboarding. So I was able to give the checklist to some new employees, and then I was able to keep a record for it. And so then later on, a few months down the road, I'm like, oh, we haven't talked about this. And, you know, they didn't need to know the first few weeks, but now they do. And so it's just a reminder. So you can use that in multiple formats.
And I can provide it in the Excel format as well as that Smartsheet link, so folks can use that.
That'd be great. Okay, kind of a longer question. It looks like it's mostly in regards to training and proficiencies. So The question is, how much detail should there be in the job description to indicate needed proficiency in tools and skills? Is part one. Second follow-up to that is, how much training is the responsibility of the district and how much is the responsibility of the staff, i.e. paid for on salary time or on your own time and resources? And do you have information on the average percent of time that should be dedicated to training? This is particularly important during poor funding periods and cost-effective accomplishment of district responsibilities. If district resources train staff, will they be inclined to move on to other employment with the skills the district has paid for? So if you ladies want to take a stab at that, I can reiterate any of that if you need me to.
Sure.
I'm happy to. Jennifer, do you want to start? It's up to you.
I'll start quick and then I'll hand it to Renee. The answer is 45 different answers. That is one of the, you're going to hear that a lot while you're hanging out at Wade or any of the all district type meetings. One of the beauties, sometimes a frustration of having 45 totally different districts is they are all governed by a local board that sets policy, and they all have different district administrators. And so the answer to that is really going to depend on what your home district has decided. That's my intro. I'll let Renee take it from there.
Sure. So we at the Conservation District, we adopted a policy fairly recent because this came up and we were concerned that districts would be taking advantage of some training and then leave, which doesn't help the district. You know, and when it comes to the percentage, that's a really good question. I want to say it's less than 5% annually that they would be putting on training or certifications, because if they're really doing more, perhaps they need to be in a different spot. It can vary depending, you know, in the early stages of their career, it might be a little bit more. In the later stages, it might be down to 1 or 2%. But our district values training and our board does. And so we have a certain dollar amount that we allocate per employee. And that's been set in our employee manual and is quite clear. And so if folks take advantage of that training and they go above and beyond, and there's some additional training that they would like to do, they're required to stay at the district for a certain amount of time or repay that last training cost. And so we have that in writing and we make them sign if they go above a certain amount. But our training allocation is quite generous. And so it really just varies between each district regarding what needs to be clarified with a job description versus what training needs to be done and paid for by the district. That's really at the call with each district. I try to make it clear with my job descriptions that this is kind of what I need you for, and that this is the training expectation, that if you're not a certified planner and you're going into that position, that you will be trained by a certain amount of time. That doesn't always happen because NRCS trainings don't always align, but there is that expectation that if you're hiring into this position, this is where your trajectory is going to go, your training trajectory and certification trajectory. And so I'll pause there. Does that answer the questions, or are there other comments from Nicole or Jennifer that you'd like to chime in regarding that?
I might add just a little bit to that as well, just to clarify a couple of the points specific to the question about how much training or what type. It's going to be really specific to the job that you're doing, and or if you're a planner and what level of planner you are. So if you have a brand new employee, they're obviously going to need a lot more training than a seasoned employee who may just need a couple things just to keep up their education. And maybe it's just me, but I think it's very important for districts to support the ongoing education of their staff so that their staff are always at the top level of their game and continue to grow as individuals. And it can be very simple on what that looks like, online resources versus in-person trainings. So it really does make a difference. The CTD offered $7,000 worth of training scholarships this year, knowing that this is really hard for districts to pay for occasionally. So we try to put out scholarships to support that when our budget allows us to do so. And it's something that's very high on our priority list to assist with that as well.
And another thing I'd like to, sorry, Jennifer, to point out is there's a difference between mandatory training that are required for your job that you really need to do versus some optional ones that may be interesting and intriguing, but may not be absolutely necessary. And so sometimes as a manager, I have to look forward and be like, okay, is this absolutely necessary given that we do have some budget constraints and we have some belt tightening going on? Or is this something that can be postponed for a different year? Even though it might be kind of fun, it doesn't really apply. And that's where it comes into a gray line of, is this something that you do outside of CD time on your own because you're interested versus is it CD worthy at this point in time? Jennifer, do you want to take over?
Yeah, and I was going to say that, going back to what Nicole said, depends on what position you're in. But, if you're coming in new to districts and you're coming in as a new planner, there's going to probably be quite a bit of planning necessary to get you up and running and get the certification that you need to have the technical capacity to do the work and for our partners to have that confidence. If you're coming into a more senior position at the district, there's probably going to be the expectation that you're coming in with the skills and knowledge to hit the ground running. And so it depends really widely on what position you're in addition to what district and what their local policies are. I'm just going to give another plug for all the online resources that are available, especially in a time like right now where we're expecting that funding is going to be getting a little bit more scarce. There are a lot of resources. CTD website is a great place to jump in, but AgLearn, there's a link, get to AgLearn from CTD. There's a lot of online resources there. And if there isn't a budget to go do a more extensive training, oftentimes if you're talking with your supervisor, they would probably, as long as you have the time available, be very supportive of you using an online platform to get that training as well. And another plug here, but if you can come to Wade, come every chance you can get, because when you come to Wade, you have all these different tracks. I know this year it's a little bit skinnier version of Wade as far as what's being offered in the tracks, but generally there's many tracks going on simultaneously, all sorts of information. And in addition to the formal presentations and workshops that are offered, that opportunity to talk, and network is so important. That will be some of the greatest training that you can get, is getting out there, talking with your colleagues, learning about what they're doing, getting new ideas and bringing them home. So.
Thank you. So we've got a few more questions in here, and one of them is specific to AgLearn. Since you mentioned that, I'm guessing I'm going to have to answer this one. So the comment question is, I know that AgLearn is a whole other topic, as I did mention, but it is a huge part of getting started with certification. Have you all heard of people having trouble getting established on AgLearn recently? I will answer that and say absolutely. Unfortunately, unfortunately, AgLearn is a wonderful resource for a whole host of free trainings that you really need to have in order to pursue that NRCS certification. Plus, they're nationally produced and vetted, and they're really great. The downside of that is getting into and staying into AgLearn can be very challenging. I 100% understand that. The CTD fields questions about AgLearn almost on a daily basis, but we're really trying to work with our state AgLearn and national AgLearn folks to get those individuals through it. On the CTD website, you will find information about AgLearn, not only how to get signed up, but then if you're having problems, a few troubleshooting and or who to contact at NRCS to get yourself through. So we recognize, everyone knows AgLearn is very challenging, but once you're in, it's very rewarding. So please keep up with that and see what you can do. Again, if you have problems, you can contact someone at NRC or at CTD directly and or NRCS, and we'll help you through. Another question here, does the NRCS planner certification cover how to create CRP conservation plans? It does not. It does help you with planning as a whole, and then you have to work on that expertise. Jennifer or Renee, I'm not sure if either of you have expertise with CRP planning and or know of individual resources you could add to that response.
I will chime in that, so when you have your apprentice training, you have your, I forget the other, and the master, there's a job approval authority. And so with that master certification, that job approval authority is really sort of that master component for CRP plans. So for some of my staff, they're writing CRP plans. They have the basic intro for conservation planning, but that's going up to the next level, either at our staff or at NRCS to sign off on that. And so that last person has that job approval authority. And so that's really into sort of that niche, that speciality component that you really have to get into. Is similar to riparian forest buffers for CREP. You kind of have to have that riparian forest specialty, that technical job approval authority component in order to finalize those plans. So there should be a process. It's just one of those you sort of plug through and get through the NRCS certification deal. There's a whole long spiel, and if you're not quite sure existing how to do that, talk with your regional, your local staff, and they can show you the checklist on the different trainings that you need to have in order to get past each of those levels. Jennifer?
Yeah, I don't have anything else to add.
Yeah.
Okay. A comment, the acronym sheet was very helpful, especially when talking to NRCS and FSA employees. So a big thanks for the acronym sheet. Another question here says some districts have NRCS offices that are more staffed than others, and I'm learning that it creates a bottleneck in getting plans and approvals through on path to funding or reimbursement. Would additional NRCS certifications amongst CD staff help to alleviate those bottlenecks, and or for instance, to establish more TSP or technical service providers, specifically around ACEP? Forgive me for asking this incorrectly, still learning. I can maybe add a little bit, and then I'd love for you two to answer. So generically, when we're talking about the NRCS certification and or CD and district offices working together, it's going to be very regionally specific how that relationship works and the work that you're doing based on the programs. So every region is going to be a little bit different. But yes, if districts, CD staff have that NRCS level of certification needed, that apprentice or certified level, then that allows you to write NRCS plans, and you may be able to assist your local NRCS office in getting those through if you have the correct certification that they need to allow you to do so or to sign off on plans. So it's really good to ask your local NRCS office about that and work with them. Again, in regards to the TSP, that's a little bit trickier. Offices that are co-located, a district staff cannot be a TSP. It's just a barrier in that program. Nationally, they're working on that to see how that works. I myself happen to be a TSP, so I understand there are a lot of benefits of that for certain programs. And all TSPs, these are technical service providers, there's a huge list of all the different ones you can be. But yes, that also helps a ton, that if you are a certified technical service provider in a specific discipline, you can get a lot of plans written and through the NRCS program with or for them. So there is a lot of benefits if you can get yourself through that process. Did either of you want to add to that, Renee or Jennifer?
Yeah, in addition to the TSP, you can also talk with your local NRCS representatives as well as your regional manager at the State Conservation Commission. And if there is an NRCS need, there is the opportunity to potentially do a task order, which would help to alleviate workload at that local NRCS office level. So, and that's different than the TSP. It's really up to the local NRCS if your staff at your home district have the credentials necessary to do that work, but that would help alleviate that workload locally.
And I would like to chime in. It's important to give your FSA and NRCS folks a little bit of grace. You don't know all of the different facets that they're going through. They may be going through some internal audits or some different things. They have numerous programs that they're working through. They know that they are understaffed. They are trying to work through the best that they can. And so for us, what we can do to expedite is make sure that our paperwork is in order, our T's are crossed, our I's are dotted, that we have everything in order, our paperwork, our photos are very clear when we are submitting our reports or field components. For contractors, that their invoices have all of these specific items that FSA is requesting. Those can bottleneck and kick back, and then it's another 3 months before they get a response. Just understand that there's a whole lot going through with each of those agencies. NRCS knows that they're short-staffed, and so those task orders and job approval authority can help, but they're still government agencies and they're still a little slow. Not because they're a government agency, it's just because there's so much bureaucracy and red tape that they have to go through in and of themselves that we don't get to see. That's on their side. And so we can do the best we can, just give them a little grace that it may not be a timeline that we like. And contractors do have to understand that when they're applying for government funds to assist for maintenance or something like that, there are always strings attached. These strings happen to be a little time lengthy.
Nice. A couple more questions, but I will put my moderator hat on and tell folks, please, if you have more questions, keep typing them into the chat box as we get through these, and/or put your hand up and I can unmute you. The next question, can you speak about any certification for communications or outreach? I will just quickly say from an NRCS and CTD certification process, there isn't anything specific to communications and outreach at this time. Hopefully in the future we'll have something in that realm, but there's nothing in the realm we've been talking about available. There might be some things outside of that that do have a communications or outreach specialty and/or program there, but not in this context. I don't know, Renee or Jennifer, if you have any tips or you're aware of any programs maybe to support that.
Yeah, I would recommend if you go on the Washington State Conservation Commission webpage, you can link to the marketing toolkit. That'll give you a whole bunch of resources that have been put together by Laura Johnson with the State Conservation Commission, as well as those who are part of the CPO group, Conservation Partnership Outreach Group, and that group meets regularly. And so if you, again, one of the great ways to get trained is being around others who are doing the work. So if you, there's no formal certification that I'm aware of, but if you would like to be more involved in that, that is a great place to start. And then also now there is a district educators group that meets regularly as well. And you can access that group through CPO contacts, or Lauren Johnson with the State Conservation Commission could put you in touch with the person who's facilitating that group. So that's a new thing that I'd encourage you getting involved with.
And also you can get a watershed facilitator certification if you are within a certain locality of, I believe it's Cooley Dam. And so I was able to do that in the past. There are some isolated locality or field-specific ones. If you're doing more with education with K-12, it's a little different than if you're doing just general community outreach. And so K-12 has a few additional certifications, but definitely reach out to that teacher K-12 group through CPO and they'll be able to connect you. Good question.
And
yeah, there's also,
sorry, the CPO acronym, I don't know what I said, but what I should have said is Communications, Partnership, and Outreach. I may have just thrown conservation out there because that's the first C that always comes to my mind, but Communication, Partnership, Outreach Group, so.
Thanks for the clarification. And for the communication outreach, the CTD on our training events page within our website, you will now find a lot of new training opportunities or links to various things. Again, during this kind of secluded at home time, a lot of virtual trainings and resources came up, and there's some really good ones in regards to communication and outreach. So while there's not a certification process, as was mentioned, there's a lot of communication support and training opportunities available for folks. Last question I've got in the chat box here says, what is the process for getting a conservation district employee a link pass? Without going into that entire process, I will say it can take a little while. And on the CTD webpage, you should find some information about that. We've recently had some folks ask about that. And similar to AgLearn, it is a process where you have to do your e-authentication, and you've got to go get your fingerprints and yada, yada, yada. So depending on where you're at in the state, you're going to have to do a little bit different process for accessing these, but you can actually find some helpful resources available out there. I know I've had to do it. You also need to keep up a link pass. If anyone's wondering what the heck is a link pass, to access an NRCS computer or their resources or office, you will have to have a link pass. It's just a verification of your identity that they require for accessing computers. If you are never going to access an NRCS computer and or you're not in a co-located office that needs that added security, you do not need to worry about getting a link pass.
It also requires at least a 25-page security thing. So if you don't need to go through it, I would prefer not to. There's some staff who it's really not necessary for them ever to have a link pass. There's others that they really do need to. So it just varies per what your job description and what you're needing to do.
Yeah. Looks like if folks have any additional questions, please put them into the chat box or your questions box, and we can get those last few. Otherwise, I'll let Renee and Jennifer, if you have any last comments here in the last 2 minutes, if you want to add anything else.
Just thanks for being with us today. I wish we could be together in person and I could see all of your shiny faces, but we'll have to wait till next year. So best of luck as you get started and welcome to the district family. So.
Yes, and please reach out to us. We are an additional resource for you. You're not alone. There's a whole lot of folks out there who can help guide you through. If we don't have an answer, we will definitely look into it and help find an answer or find somebody else who is more knowledgeable. So good luck.
Yeah, and lastly, from the perspective of the CTD, I will say, yeah, welcome to the district world. Check out our website for resources, contact anyone. We too are here to help you get through your training and certification, expertise, etc. So we're here to provide you the resources you need, and we're always welcome to feedback on making those better for you. So thanks for allowing me to be part of your presentation today as well, ladies. Much appreciated.